ordering, they're not available anymore.
We're still waiting in line.
Oh, we know.
I'll have to ask. This was Jonathan's copy.
Oh, okay, well, I can put
That's
it in
okay.
my,
No, I'll put it. Hey, guys.
thank you. Shabbat shalom.
How are you doing?
Much better. Surprise. I didn't recognize him from the back.
Close quarters.
Hine
Matov
Matov
Uma
Uma
Naim
Naim Sheverachim Sheverachim Gam Yachad Hine Matov Uma Naim Sheverachim Sheverachim Gam Yachad
Hine Matov
Hine Matov
Uma Naim
Uma Naim
Sheverachim
Sheverachim
Gam Yachad
Gam Yachad
Hine Matov
Hine Matov
Uma Naim
Uma Naim
Sheverachim
Sheverachim
Gam Yachad
Gam Yachad Hine Matov Umanaim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad Hine Matov Umanaim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad
Hine Matov Umanayim
Shevet Achim Gam Yachad
Hine Matov Umanayim
Shevet Achim Gam Yachad Hine Matov Umanayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad.
Well, almost Shabbat Shalom. Nice to see everyone. We were anticipating a capacity crowd tonight. Nigel was set up for our, is it Billy Joel? Tomorrow night? That's Sunday. Well, that's tomorrow, isn't it? It's Shabbos now. Day after Shabbos is Sunday. You know, we Jews, we're progressive. So Billy Joel Sunday, far be it from us to be anti-Semitic, too. We welcome as well those distance davening with us, following along from our congregational website. We hope you made an opportunity to download a copy of our satellite Siddur to keep you in orbit. I will say that having ditched out last week and played hooky, I very much thank the congregation and leadership on behalf of the membership for giving me the evening off to stay home with Carol. Her procedure the previous Tuesday was only semi-intrusive, hurt like hell, and she's almost back in the saddle. Looking forward to seeing everyone next week. And in the meantime, thanks our Temple family very much for your good wishes. That she's on a roll. And I'm assuming watching us now, in which case, chicken soup and rest. Let's begin by opening to page 124. And in the middle of the page, We begin our worship by sharing what we've come to think of as our mission statement. A declaration we share together. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for bread. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture. Doors. Stumbling block to hunger-stricken feet. And be too high to between complacency. All wet. The doorway to a richer and more meaning. Heather and Phyllis, if you'd honor us by coming forth together, you get one candle each, and whoever lost the toss has to light the match. Let's turn in our prayer books back to page 121 for Lichtbenchen.
No, you're going to do both. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Let's bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של שבת.
Amen. And I didn't mention welcome back to my pulpit partner. The cantor also played hooky last Friday, except she was jealous of Carol's surgical procedure and decided to have one herself. So we'll be tag teaming tonight like WWE. Default mode is you're doing all the music, but don't hem and haw or clear your throat or sort of nod because I might miss it. Don't be bashful about handing anything off you want me to cover musically.
Thank you. And welcome to the Zeldins.
All right, page 142. Shalom Aleichem, a greeting to the Shabbat angels of blessing and of peace. And for those following at home, you're in the middle of page 2.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharit, Malachi Elyon. Melech, Malachi Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bochem Shalom, Malachi HaShalom, Malachi Elyon. Melech Malachi Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachi HaShalom, Malachi Elyon. מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. צדקן ושלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. ממלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
I was just thinking about you two last week. Yes, entertaining Carol post-ops. We did a marathon of watching musicals. And early on in Oklahoma, we were singing Everything's Up to Date in Kansas City. And I thought of you too. What a delight to see you both. You're going to be here next week, so you can see Carol. She'll be upset to have missed you. All right, good answer. That's the right answer. You gave the right answer. Everyone knows what's the most important page in the prayer book? 144. Because that's a gross, that's right. Hatzi Kaddish, the transition from our preliminaries into our evening service.
יתגדל, יתקדש, שמי רבה.
Amen.
ועלמד יברך יראותי, וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומייכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה, ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, להלל ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתהלל, ויתהלל שמי לקודשו בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתו ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ואמרו amen.
Page 146, we rise for the call to worship.
Responsively. ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Even as we rise out of respect when the judge enters a courtroom, when the king enters a throne room to hold court, so can we now resume our seats as we continue in preparing for the recitation of the Shema. And I think, Chazan, let's do our two chatimot rather than any musical piece in between. So we'll do a meditation and a chatimah. Here on page 148, 149, take a moment to ponder in preparation for the Shema the transcendence of God's unknowability as the creator of the universe.
Baruch atah Adonai Ha'ma'arim Arabim.
Amen. And on page 150, the paradoxical immanence of God as our immediately present covenant partner.
Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Amen.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Geulah, page 157. And let us read together. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot. Wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is always a better place, a promised land. The winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסיף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסיף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך, וכי היום לבני משה, זילי ענו ויאמרו, זילי ענו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פנה אדוני את יעקב, וגילו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. יא לה 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 לה, יא לה לה לה, יא לה 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 לה.
From the power and drama of the Song of the Sea to a serenity of a bedtime prayer on page 160. Ashkivenu Eloheinu l'shalom, v'amidenu malkeinu l'chayim. Take a moment to ponder what it is to be a small child being tucked in after dark and the lights turn out. The serenity, the restfulness, and also the fear and anxiety as we reach out to God to be our guardian and protector.
Baruch atah Adonai Aborisokah Shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Baruch atah אתה אדוני הפורס וקל שלום שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים ועל כל עמו ועל ירושלים שלום ועל ירושלים ועל כל עמו ועל ירושלים שלום ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס וקל שלום שלום עלינו
Shalom Aleinu.
ועל כל עמו ישראל ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם
Ubayom Ashvi Shavat Vayinafash. Everyone, Shavat Vayinafash with feeling. Shavat Vayinafash Veshamru
בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם
Everyone knows what Vayinafash means? That's a declaration from the book of Exodus. God tells Moses, yeah, I know you're going down the mountain to have them make the Mishkan, but even for a job that important, V'shamru v'nei Yisrael to Shabbat, even for this manufacturing process that will take months to make the Mishkan, they have to knock off for the weekend. Because God rested for the weekend, knocked off on the seventh day. Vayom hashvi'i, on the seventh day, shavat. It's not Shabbat. It's a verb. Shavat. Show me your excited face. Yeah, Shabbat is a noun. Shavat is a verb. Vayinafash. God stopped doing. Vayinafash means one of two things. It means either and caught his breath, as if God has a breath to catch. Or, nefesh is a soul, in which case, vayinafash is an invitation. In the immortal words of that 1970s disco melody, let's get spiritual, spiritual. That's going to be page 164. Let us rise together. And before we take a virtual step apart, each into our own space and mood and theme, let us begin by saying together with the words of the psalmist, Adonai sfatai tiftach ufi agid tilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise.
Yaseh Shalom Bimromav Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imelu Amen. Ose Shalom Imramav Uyase Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imru Amen. Ose Shalom Vimromav Uyase Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imru Amen. Ose Shalom Vimromav Uyase Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imru Amen.
Now, you're going to have to sit this one out because you're a recipient. So I'm usurping your half of the pulpit for a moment. Amisha Berach prayer this evening, a tribute, an aspiration, and a hope for all the members of our congregation who, even on this sweet and joyous Shabbat, having played hooky last week, it's now beginning my 11th year here. Last week didn't count. We did our 10cennial the end of December, so 11th year starts this week. So I'd like to think it's a doubly joyous time. But there are many of our temple family who lie on beds of illness, are preparing for, recovering from surgery, awaiting test results, looking to break out of invidious cycles of addiction, anxiety, pain, and fear. So many different kinds of healing for so many different people. Among the members of our congregation, Leah Jacobson, Joan and Bert Thompson, Bert Posner, Roberta Schwartz, Jane Barron, Joanne Blau, Shirley Posner, Larry Satcher, Beth Pavlo, Steve Roberts, Herb Wallach, Alan Zuckerman, Leo Wertheim, blessedly and happily back in our midst, young men, George Karpman, Belle Finfer, Lynn Wilk, our cantor, happily back but still a little sore, and the Rebbitzin, Carol Gross, lounging at home and hopefully davening from the distance with us. In addition, we name these kinfolk and friends of our congregants for whom our prayers have been asked. For John Vernon, Julie Fitzgerald, Susan Donahue, Margaret Gallivan, Marianne Mulligan, Linda Gagnon, Christy Raymond, Brandon Ben Sharon, Teddy Emerson, Rosa Footlick, Barbara Kretschmar, Mary Finisand, Pete Carochi, Paula McIver, Sandy Footlick, Karen DeSessa, Jim McDonald, Alba McDonald, Marjorie Sarmiento, Bernie Enfavre, Friedrich, Nan Needleman, Rick Wilk, Elaine Veneman, Mayor Ben Chava Fega, Paul Pieper, Leva LaCava Hughes, Orlando Caceres, blessedly back in our midst, our custodian all healed up from his footwork late last year, and Virginia Footlick, Tom Boucher, Scott Snyder, Martha Eldridge Stark, and anyone else we'd like to call out and add their names to our prayer list, please. I'm sorry. Barb, again, we missed you. Yes. Yes, I'm sorry. Gary Singer.
Rahim Benya.
And for those distance davening with us, don't be bashful about calling out a name. We will yell at the umpire for a bad call. We don't mind at all reaching out virtually, knowing however it's involved, we'll catch you on this end as we offer this prayer for healing together. Mi sheberach habracha leimotenu. May one of strength who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our life a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishe berach imotenu bekor habracha lehavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. And Bert Thompson, we're going to put a little rose in your cheeks, young man, with the slash of Manischewitz. If you come forth and introduce our Kiddush for us this evening. Those who'd like to follow along Shabbat Kiddush, you'll find it on page 123 in the big prayer book at home, page 10 in your satellite Siddur.
The seventh day is consecrated to the eternal God. On Shabbat, eternal sign of creation, we remember that we are created in the divine image. We therefore raise the cup in thanksgiving. Let's read together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei pri hagafen. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodesho b'ahava uvratzon hinhilanu zikaron lemaseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila lemikra hekodesh zecher litziat Mitzrayim. Kivanu v'acharta, lotanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, v'ahava uv'ratzon, hinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-shabbat. Tovim leim varukim. Bert, that was so admirable. Would you slide around front and slice up some challah for us too?
Baruch atah Adonai,
Eloheinu melech haolam, lechem min haaretz, v'teyamvun. Bert is one of our famous JCMI 5 chefs, so he's a mean hand at the challah slicing.
Smells good.
Is this an official Bob?
Had a lot of people tonight.
That's good. We don't want to go into withdrawal.
Tell me when to stop.
I think we're set. One more for the cantor. That last one is, thank you. But the last one is for the cantor. Build up her strength.
I'm good, thanks. I'm good.
I found myself this week doing some text study and ended up back in the book of Judges. You know, Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, and he also led the Israelites for several years in subduing the promised land and bringing the people together as a unified nation, swearing to live by the words of Torah. But once Joshua died, there are still some pockets of resistance to be mopped up, which is really a euphemism, and things kind of went to Hades in a handbasket. Book of Judges describes this chaotic Wild West period where that loose confederation of 12 tribes gets even looser and becomes 12 tribes instead of one nation of Israel. And no less than 3 times in this Wild West period of ancient Israel does the narrative say, Bayamim hahem lo haya melech b'Yisrael. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Kol ish asa hayashar be'anav. Everyone did whatever they damn well wanted. The message is, of the text, that the values of a nation, the theme and the tone of what the nation is all about, is set from the top, like the capstone of a pyramid, which is a fractal or microcosm of the entire pyramid underneath. This plays out in the book of Kings. One of the frustrations of reading the books of Kings in the Bible is that they'll tell you a story about what King Jedediah or King Josiah or King whatever may have done, Menachem, doesn't matter. And then it'll say, and then he died and was buried with his forebears. And as for the rest of the acts of King such and such, are they not written in the books of the kings of Israel? And I'm saying, well, am I not reading the book of the kings of Israel? And the answer is no. Because the royal archives are somewhere else. What we have in the Tanakh is a moral history of the Jewish people. And as a moral history, what it will tell you about King such and such or King so-and-so is he was 30 years old when he came to the throne. He did what was right in the sight of the Lord. He ruled for 40 years and died and was buried with his ancestors. That's it. He's X years old. He did what was right. Were there no events of his monarchy? None recorded. What a boring narrative. But there's boring because there's no conflict. A lot may, in fact, have happened during that king's regency in Israel in ancient times, both locally and internationally. But there was nothing worth recording in the moral history of Israel because the king did what was right in the sight of God. The tone of the era, the tenor of the society is set from the top. I found myself thinking about that in the middle of the week when this news came of this strange shooting in Minneapolis. I don't know if anyone here was on the search committee. I know Sue was. To remember from my resume that I was for 4 years a police chaplain over in Coral Springs. My experience in police is if you discharge the firearm in the line of duty, let alone shoot someone, the officer in question is put on administrative leave. There is an intensive probe, and from the top, the only statement command will make to the press is that no comment can be made in the course of an ongoing investigation, which will in fact happen because there's accountability. What was strange for me this week following the news is that top command summarily exonerated the officer in question and labeled the victim a demented leftist and a terrorist. I found myself wondering about us as a society. Because not a political statement, but a moral one. What happened to accountability in our society? My mother was a precinct captain on voting. Every election, my mom was there as a precinct captain. As a little kid, I don't know what that meant. Just my mom was at our elementary school and a bunch of grown-ups were coming and putting papers in a box. Years later, when I found out what it all was about, I was very proud of her for her sense of civic duty. And that's how I was brought up. It turns out that it seems that the mom in Minneapolis was just picking up her 6-year-old at school. But the initial news report were that she was there as a civilian monitoring the work of the ICE agents. Well, I'll tell you that my mother would have been a little surprised as a precinct captain had she been here in Florida for the 2000 election with the hanging Chad. That was an educational moment. We learned that the little punch-out thing is called a Chad, the plural of which is Chad. This could be a Final Jeopardy question. And inasmuch as the results of the election were so close and contested, there was a recount. And there were designated monitors from both parties watching the count. Both sets of whom had significant and salient points of disagreement in matters of politics and policy and where they'd like to see the country grow. But all of whom respected each other as fellow citizens, no one of whom denounced the other as demented, nor attacked them as criminals. What happened to accountability in our country? The last trauma in Minneapolis, 5.5 years and about 3 blocks ago. George Floyd's killing was documented by passers-by with cameras in their phones. My time with the police was long enough ago that most people didn't have mobile phones. What they did was the size of a brick, let alone a camera. But if in fact, in the course of a traffic stop or anything else that I was involved in as a ride-along with one of our officers, if a citizen had a camera phone and decided they're going to monitor police action and provide evidence of police brutality if there's any inappropriateness, I can tell you that the cops I rode along with would have viewed that as an intrusive nuisance, but they would not have interrupted the activity because they recognize that another citizen standing by documenting all this, if they're not interfering with the officer and they're not involving themselves in the interaction with the person that's being stopped and questioned, they are protected under the First Amendment, speech and assembly. And ultimately, the police might be grateful to have the documentation in the days before body cameras to bolster the officer's own accountability with testimony to his professionalism. The theme is set from the top. For an Anna-Called Good shooting this week, her former teacher at Old Dominion University in Virginia, and now the university president, Brian Hemphill, without weighing in political terms, made the sociological observation. It is yet another clear example that fear and violence have sadly become commonplace in our nation. Now, College President Hemphill sets the tone from the top, compared to the many other campuses on which fear and violence have become commonplace. We've had some dismayed, angry, and frustrated conversation over the last year or so about our children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews being intimidated, Jews on campus since October 7th, and about the seeming failure of the administration to set the tone from the top by establishing boundaries to freedom of speech in the academic marketplace of ideas. This is all part of what historian Helen Oster calls the unprecedented tsunami of anti-Semitism sweeping the so-called civilized world. In response to which, British journalist Melanie Phillips emphasizes a core truth: Jewish survival has always depended on the courage to assert Jewish identity when power demands its erasure. Jewish Student Survival Guide. We might have to send a copy to all of our grandchildren and nieces and nephews at school. Isabella Tabarovsky, born in the Soviet Union, the daughter of refuseniks, an escapee from the former Soviet Union while it was still the Soviet Union. She calls on Jews to reject the poisonous ideological consensus demanding that we agree that Israel is evil, that Zionism is Nazism, that Jews are an oppressor class in need of re-education. Buying into such premises on the part of the communist government was a test of ideological purity faced by the Jewish refuseniks in Russia, who, as the name suggests, pressured to disavow their identity in order to succeed, refused and accepted failure in that society, rather than surrender and relinquish their own sense of self. The goal of the government was to erase Jewish peoplehood and reshape Jews into something politically acceptable, or at least socially palatable. The proud and unflagging self-assertion of the refuseniks, who boldly asserted themselves as themselves, was not a weakness, but a weapon that helped crack the Soviet system. In a recent Saturday morning Torah study, we pondered David Nierenberg's fascinating and troubling but powerfully important book, Anti-Judaism. And his premise is basically the problem isn't Jews. but how other people throughout history have been taught to think about Jews. What they think has nothing to do with who we are. Their assumption is not our reality, nor for that matter, reality itself. Melanie Phillips says, I refuse to shrink my identity to make others comfortable. I refuse ideological coercion dressed up as morality. I refuse to let Jewish history be rewritten by people who don't carry its consequences as we do. Jewish dignity has never been granted by consensus. It has always been claimed. We need to offer reassurance and encouragement to our kids, our grandchildren, our nieces and nephews, to let them know their bar and bat mitzvah wasn't about faking their way through a service to get their parents off their back and make their grandparents happy. It was about standing up as incipient young adults, to be counted as proudly identified members of our fabulously ancient people, as participants in its ongoing history, and as the instrument of its mission to bring God's redemption to a damaged world. We need to help them claim their legacy with pride and to act on it with faith. But we need to claim it for ourselves as well, because in a world of fear and violence, we can only do so much about the violence beyond repudiating it as a tactic for ourselves. But the fear is altogether of our own making. And sometimes, whoever the king may be, the tone of his era needs to be set from the bottom up. Shabbat shalom.
We're a little close quarters up here this evening. Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat shalom. Greetings from our board of directors and a few announcements. I'd like to welcome back Rabbi Gross to the pulpit, and I'd also like to welcome back the cantor. I hope Carol's well, and cantor, I hope you're feeling better. I welcome visitors worshiping with us tonight and invite you to stay on hand for the Oneg Shabbat following services. Tonight's Oneg was coordinated by Mitch Braun, Bob Jarrett, Heather Greenfield, Barbara Holtz, Mary Pinto, Phyllis Rosenblum, and Beth Weinberg. Our lovely Oneg is sponsored by Bert and Shirley Posner in memory of Isaac Noodleman, Shirley's father. Our lovely flowers are sponsored by Charlie and Karen Blum in gratitude to Bob Jarrett's flower-making skills. Current details of everything going on in congregational life can be found on our website and our monthly newsletter, The Messenger, and in the semi-weekly email notifications we send out to membership. Tonight, I'll remind everyone, join us this Sunday, January 11th at 7:30 for Turnstiles, the Ultimate Billy Joel concert. You can purchase tickets for all the shows at jcmimusic.com. Thursday Mahjong is back from 11 to 3. Please bring your lunch. If you have any questions, call Shirley Posner. I have Shirley's number. I'm not going to give it out tonight, but you can look her up in our membership directory. But give Shirley a call if you're interested in Mahjong. Please note there is a date change. If you've already purchased tickets for the Bee Gees concert, it will be on Saturday, March 14th at 7:30, not March 21st. The next film for the film festival will be on Sunday, January 18th at 2 p.m. You can also buy tickets at jcmimusic.com or at the door. Next month's Women's Book Club will meet Tuesday, January 20th at 11 a.m. The book of the month is In My Father's Court by Isaac Bashevis Singer. You can find flyers around the building. Don't forget, Monday night bingo doors open at 5 p.m. The Chess Club meets every Tuesday from 9:30 to 12 p.m. Please contact Irv Pavlov. The Office of Sun Memorial Yahrzeit Candles. Do not forget to bring in food for those in the community less fortunate when you come on Fridays, or leave a donation in the tzedakah box. And now, as we move to conclusion of tonight's service, I invite you to be our final honorees, the Pinto family. Let us please reopen our prayer books to page 586 and rise together for Lane.
That's it. You come as a family, you go upstairs as a family. It's a package deal.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Our Kaddish prayer on page 598 in Satellite Siddur, towards the tail end there. A tribute on the Shabbat to our former member and leader Bernard Blutfeld and Robert Hecht, both laid to rest within this past week, whose families observe yet the month of Shiva. And we name as well Henry Berner, recently claimed from our midst in the Shloshim month. And these the anniversaries whose death were observed during the week now ending. Eleanor Bittman, Libby Bonfield, Eva Marie Brown, Ethel Chase, Samuel Feldman, Harvey Goldenberg, Jay Greenberg, Benjamin Haynes, Uriah Kaplan, Benjamin Gershwin Klein, Morris Cross, Leah Lyons, Norma Jean Meir, Harry Nathanson, Isaac Noodleman, Clara Plager, Sidney Rand, Daniel Rosenthal, David Sabtai, Henry H. Stroller, Ruth C. Wertheim, and Joanne Human. Anyone have Avelut or Yartzeit in addition? Zichronam livracha, may remembering them be always a blessing. Yit gadal, v'yit gadash, shemei rabbah, ve'en ve'yamlich malchutei. Chayechon v'yomechon, chayei dechol bet Yisrael, v'hagala v'yizman karir imru. Amen. Shmei Rabbah Maporach, Lalam Bal Meol Maya, Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitpa'ar, Yitramam, Yitnase, Yitadar, Yitalev, Yitalal, Shmei de Kudusha, Rihu. Leila Min Kol Birchata, Bishirata, Tushbechata, Venechamata, Damiran Ba'alma, Vimru. Amen. Shlama Rabbah Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, Vimru. Amen. Say Shalom, Vimru Ma'am. Shalom. Atenu v'al kol Yisrael. May the maker of peace on high make peace for us, for all Israel, and for those who mourn, and let us say. Chazan, we'll close on this evening. Ein Keloheinu sound good? Page 626, Satellite Sidur, you're on page 12.
Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Keloheinu, Mi Kadonenu, Mi Kemalkeinu, Mi Kemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Ladonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu.
Everyone turn to the person closest to you didn't come with and say Shabbat Shalom.
I got lightheaded, so it was a good thing that I, was parked there. I would have been in deep doo-doo. Silly you. Glad you're here. Perfect timing.